Thank you guys for joining me today to discuss the wildest conspiracies from around the internet. Make sure to comment and subscribe and share. Also, y'all, this is the last week you have to enter the giveaway. Next Friday, February 28th, I'll be announcing the winner for the 5K merch my girlfriend handmade for one of you guys. All you have to do to enter is comment giveaway on one of the last 3 videos I've made, including this one. And then if you follow me on Instagram, I'll be making a post later this week for individuals to get a second entry. And finally, join our Discord, where I'll be sending out instructions later this week on how to gain another entry. So you can enter up to 3 times, and I will announce the winner in next week's video with more information on how to move forward so we can get this awesome sweatshirt to one of you. All right, now back to the video. Coming from a user on X by the name of AIDS Ventura Paused Detective, the thread begins by simply asking us to please put yourself in my shoes. It's a typical day scrolling Facebook while not having a single thought about Jim Carrey, followed by this lovely image. Scrolling down, we are linked to an article discussing this of Jim Carrey's ex-girlfriend, a case which I did not know this, but he was sworn in to answer questions about. Jim was called to court in 2017, not just because he knew this girl at one point, but because her husband and mother believed deeply and with absolute certainty that Jim Carrey was involved in her death. They claimed that Carrey obtained the drugs used in her suicide under the fake name Arthur King, and then gave them to her knowing she was depressive and suicidal. They also claim that Jim Carrey gave her 3 STDs without warning, and that is wild in and of itself. The author of this theory then links us to a bizarre clip from the movie Batman Forever, where Jim Carrey stages his boss's murder as a suicide. This movie was released in 2007, 10 years before he was called in for questioning about his ex's death. After this, Ventura dives into another interesting rabbit hole that's part of this whole thing, which is Jim Carrey's connection to a man named Charles Rocket, who is best known for being the bad guy in Dumb and Dumber, and who also ended his own life by slicing his throat. Ventura believes this is further evidence of Jim Carrey's nefarious actions, since Charles Rocket was chosen for a spot on SNL directly over Carrey himself, who was an 18-year-old at the time. This is the sort of come-up that would have been an absolute career launcher for Jim and would have placed him directly into the limelight. With these 2 loose connections, you, like myself, may be saying, it's just a coincidence, but when I tell you this thread goes so far, I haven't gotten to its end, I mean it. Ventura, our author, decides to continue his escapade by watching the movie Dumb and Dumber, which Jim Carrey co-stars in. This is a scene where Jim Carrey and his co-star Jeff Daniel are speaking in the car about what to do about Joe Mantelano, the bad guy of the film, who's portrayed by none other than Charles Rocket, who got the spot on SNL instead of Jim Carrey. Carrey in this scene, so lovingly linked to us by Ventura, goes on to refer to Charles Rocket's character, saying that they should catch him a half-mile down the road and slit his throat. Now, this is an odd line considering how Charles met his end, which, yes, was via slicing of the throat, but even stranger considering it's not actually in the script. Based on the image of the script provided, we can actually see what the script was meant to say, and it's nothing like what Carrey ended up saying, meaning that this was complete improvisation straight from Carrey's mind. This line was pretty shocking, and Ventura makes an interesting point where he says that for a second it kind of seems like Jeff Daniels, Jim Carrey's co-star in this movie, was caught off guard by this line and gave a genuine shocked reaction. But that's up for you to decide. Even stranger, in the same film, there's a scene in which an advertisement plays on screen containing a young Jonathan Brandeis, whose life was also ended, allegedly at his own hand. Jonathan's demise is a rabbit hole in and of itself, and for one reason or another, it's likely his end wasn't such a cut and dry event, especially considering what we are now aware of about how child actors are treated. This is where the conspiracy gets really insane, to the point it should probably be its own video. But in the movie The Number 23, which Ventura references a ton in this conspiracy dissertation, Jim Carrey, who stars in this film, has a very interesting line where he says, "I was born at 11:12 p.m. and Brandeis would die on 11/12/2003. It's also really odd with the overall context of the movie Number 23, because it's about a guy who uncovers the number 23 is hidden all about him, and how that connects to this giant deep secret about reality. I could go on this tangent for several hours rather than several minutes if we were to pour down every rabbit hole here, but let me just say this blew my mind in class and was admittedly much more entertaining. Not saying that I necessarily believe the conspiracy, but most certainly the research and level of dedication that was required to create this is pretty insane, and at the very least it is a pretty interesting mystery, because some of the facts are genuinely a little too weird to ignore, especially because we already know Carrey was heavily suspected of causing his ex's suicide. But hey, that's just my take. Let me know yours below. Jackson and Diddy. Although this sounds like a masterful comic book duo like Calvin and Hobbes, it's not. As of late, there's been a lot of information coming out about Sean John Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka the guy whose name literally tells us what he gets up to. We all know that it's come out that he's a massive PDF file, and seems to have facilitated a very similar cabal to the dude on this poster who definitely didn't hang itself. But what this conspiracy is alleging is much deeper. Megzilla Astralis over on Reddit seems to think so, at least, in a post that brings to light some rather intriguing connections. Michael Jackson possibly used in Diddy's situation? So I've been seeing about the tunnels connecting MJ and Diddy's house, and of course, they're gonna say it's not true and the tunnel doesn't exist, but if it does, I definitely believe the children were transported from Michael's house to Diddy's. But no one seems to have seen children going there. However, people did visibly see children regularly visiting Michael Jackson's house for sleepovers and to visit Neverland, and I believe this was used as a guise to make nothing look suspicious. People would just assume they were visiting Michael's house, but the children were being transported to Diddy's house from Michael's, and then taken from Diddy's house back to Michael's when the party was finished. I believe there must be more underground tunnel systems like this, so children and people can easily be transported to these celebs and rich people's houses without it being obvious. And Michael was used as a scapegoat. He said in an interview, "If you're talking about me having sex with kids, that's a nut. That's not me. That's the guy down the street." And who lives down the street from him? Diddy. Now this is very interesting, and apparently this is not the only person who has been theorizing about the connection between Diddy and Michael. These rumors have been circulating for years. Diddy and MJ were known friends, often seen consorting with one another and captured in many a photograph. But more than that, this user really was correct about many of the assertions he makes. The video I showed during the reading shows Michael Jackson denying the allegations and then blaming the guy down the street. And as it turns out, the author of this post is correct. Diddy lives just 4 minutes down the road from Michael, literally down one single street, less than a mile as the crow flies. So definitely within pretty feasible tunnel digging range, which is something that also has yet to be denied by any of the investigating authorities, as they have yet to reveal any of the specifics about what was found or what was not found in either of these men's homes. But that's about as much as I can advocate for this one. If you're interested, we can dive further sometime. Comment below your thoughts and if you'd like to see a video on the connections. With all of the recent movement in the American government, some questions are being asked that have never been asked before, and the answers we are receiving are rather alarming. Most recently is the question of what's actually being stored beneath the monolithic Fort Knox, a place so infamous for its high level of security that it's become a common turn of phrase to say that something is as secure as Fort Knox. Originally, Fort Knox was just your average military base providing grounds for training and the like. However, in 1936, it officially became the United States Bullion Depository. Bullion means gold, silver, precious metals. The place is much like you'd expect a fort beyond compare. From the outside, it honestly looks kind of unimpressive, but beneath its floors are said to be 4,583 tons of the purest gold Earth has to offer, which is over half of the nation's total gold reserves. And I want to emphasize said to be, because despite security systems like rotating floors that cut off the oxygen supply, you won't find that online, by the way. I heard that from a former Fed employee. The gold may no longer actually be in Fort Knox. This may seem fairly crazy, but out of everything on this list, I think it could also possibly be the most likely, considering gold is one of the most valuable minerals on Earth, is extremely useful, and finds its way into almost every industry. Not to mention, it's an excellent investment vehicle. One would expect the government to keep a fairly good lock on it. I mean, I own some gold, and I know where it is at all times. The government owns roughly $270 billion worth of gold, and can't actually tell us it's down there. But surely you're asking yourself, as I did when I first read this must just be some bizarre political misunderstanding, right? But no. An interesting little factoid for you is that in its almost 100 years in operation, Fort Knox has never really been audited, at least not seriously. In fact, the last time an outsider or anyone really at all came to check on our national gold supply was over 50 years ago. And even then, no one got to see the actual gold. The few that were invited on the trip saw roughly 6% of the total gold being taken through one of 15 vaults. And even more worrisome about this event was that they had to take the word of those that were guiding them that they were actually seeing gold, because there was no purity test done of the mineral, and they also didn't even let them touch the gold bars except for the ones that were handed to them specifically, meaning that for all we know, the rest of the gold in these vaults, air quotes, could have just been cardboard from Hobby Lobby, for all we know. In 2017 though, Secretary Munchin made a visit to the vaults as well, but what exactly he saw can't be confirmed. Now, unlike a lot of mysteries, this one's happening literally as we speak, and it's an ongoing mystery because as far as I'm aware, the official plans haven't been established yet to go visit Fort Knox, so we're all kind of just left to wonder. But interestingly, some investigators uncovered further evidence that the situation at Fort Knox may not be as advertised, since England has been sending billions of dollars worth of pure gold to the US over the past several months. And this is right in the timeline of President Trump's re-election, with the media reason being that people have some economic fears and people want their gold back, but that seems a little suspicious considering the timing. And it's not like we're talking kind of minor amounts of gold or some fringe bank in England. This is literally the Bank of England's private vaults that we're talking about. That's the tea and crumpet people's version of Fort Knox. And just in the past couple months alone, over 2% of their gold reserves have been depleted and returned to the US, with JP Morgan Chase withdrawing over $4 billion worth of pure gold alone. Some have found this suspicious, suggesting that the government is using these big corporations to cover their butts because the gold isn't down there, by using all these big corporations' gold to be like, hey, it's totally full down here, guys, when it's not. All in all, though, this is a super interesting theory, and it has some actual evidence backing it up, which is something I always appreciate. But one of the things that makes me doubt it a little bit is that no one can actually get the story quite straight. Some people think that there's more gold down there than we've been told, while others think that there's no gold down there. So who knows? But let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think there's too much gold beneath Fort Knox, or do you think there's too little? Alrighty guys, that's what I've got for you today. Make sure to join the giveaway this week because it's our last week of doing this. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the upcoming video. And without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see y'all in the next one.